thanks to all the participants who have joined, and I guess we are more participants are logging on as we speak. So welcome to students and all the other participants in this session. I'll just give a background of the session before we get started. So I'm Karthik from the TCS campus recruitment team. We have on this call also my colleagues Hari and Danesh, also from the campus recruitment team, and we have our guest speaker for today, Mr. Arjun. So the purpose of this session is we wanted to give some inputs on cracking the TCS Code Vita interviews. So we are aware that the audience who is logged on to this session are people who have taken part in the TCS Code Vita competition that we conducted a little while ago. So we thought that it would be good inputs that we are giving to students. It will be good for them if we give some inputs on actually how to crack the TCS Code Vita interview for those people who are invited for a direct interview with TCS. So we have asked one of our technical experts, Arjun. I'm very happy to invite him to this session. So he has been, so you can see his profile, which is displayed on the screen in front of you. He has more than 10 years experience in TCS and is working on a lot of niche technologies, and he has actually supported the campus recruitment team as a Code Vita panelist for more than 5 to 6 years now. So yes, I think it would have been Arjun, maybe more than, I mean, some hundreds of students that you would have interviewed yes, over the last few years.
True. That's right.
So we thought he is the right person to get onto this session, and I will not stand in the way of his inputs anymore. So what I would request him to do is take us through the expectations from the panelists side, and what are the inputs that students should be well prepared for if they are facing if facing an interview with TCS, specifically a Code Vita interview. So what I will request all the audience to do is, once the entire session is over, once Arjun finishes giving his inputs, we will open question and answers. So the participants can type the question answers in the chat window, and then we will take it up after that. Okay, so over to Arjun. All yours, Arjun.
Thanks Karthik for giving that quick intro, and good afternoon, everyone. So I believe you are clear about the intent and the objective of the session. So I'll be talking about a few aspects as far as the expectations and what would really create a win-win situation for this technical discussions are concerned moving further. So quickly to start with, I would like to showcase what is the agenda of this discussion. So these are the aspects that I would be prominently covering, but not limited to, in case if there are any queries, like Karthik mentioned. Apart from this, you can pose all your questions on the chat window, and I'll be happy to address all those. So these are the aspects that I would be covering during this session. The evaluation metrics, expectations, what is the preparation and research that one should do as far as this aspiration is concerned for the Code Vita interview, and what is the practical application of your coursework, your curriculum, as well as the project work that you do, and what are the common pitfalls one should avoid before appearing for this interview and during the technical discussion as well. And would like to conclude with giving all the final tips which can help you to ace the interview, followed by the final question and answer. All right. So moving ahead, let's start with the evaluation metrics. So you must be wondering, fine. See, most of the organizations will have their own metrics, in evaluating a candidate. What would be those parameters? What would be those metrics? So see, it is not just for this particular evaluation process, but in general, there could be standard guidelines that are followed, but specific to the Code Vita interview process is concerned, These are very important to be kept in mind for the aspirer, right? So understanding the problem statement, what is the problem statement all about? And conceptually, you need to understand how do you approach in converting this problem statement to your code. And it is also good to have an algorithmic description or a pictorial representation of your code in the form of a flow chart, which can help the interviewer understand what is the level in which you have conceptually gained the problem statements read up actually the requirements of the problem statement. Coming to the programming language that you use to write the program. So generally any programming language constitutes of a syntax and semantics. As you all know, syntax is something, actually your programming language is an implementer. Conceptually understanding what the problem statement is definitely plays a key role. However, at times we focus more on the semantics and the conceptuality that I spoke about, but not much of syntax. But it is also important that you understand what is the use case scenario of the syntax, because we are in the age of Google where we will be able to browse across the website and get the info on what is the syntax. But it is more important to apply it, convert the syntax to a compiler understandable format, right? So that is something which you guys know or not is what we try to evaluate, right? And the next couple of the next couple of things, conceptual understanding and solved in a text editor. To talk about the conceptual understanding, I have discussed pretty much in length. However, one additional point that I would like to add here is, see, your problem statement implementation in a code, you need to be clear about the actual artifacts of the problem, like whether this implementation can be optimally implemented using an object-oriented language, or a structured language, or an aspect-oriented language, right? So these are the different paradigms of your programming language, right? So what kind of an understanding, apart from the problem statement derivation, what implementation is also required is something which you need to think about. So these are a few metrics that we would definitely like to consider for evaluating a candidate. And guys, all of you understand that the current mode of evaluation will be online, right? So there is other infrastructure kind of an app which will be used, the information about that will be shared moving further when you progress to the next steps of this code beta interview and all that. However, keeping in mind that this procedure is online, you need to understand that your text editor should be kept open, or if there is any Notepad, Crimson editor kind of open source editors are available. So you need to make sure that you are properly sharing the screen. What kind of stats are being displayed there should be solved there if it is required, and you should exhibit it. So whether you are aware of all these things, so these are the things that one should keep in mind, considered as a metrics for this evaluation. All right. So moving ahead. So what are the expectations? So this is pretty much aligned to the evaluation metrics that I just spoke about in the earlier slide. So the first point is pretty much about the syntax and semantics. So generally, language is not very important because it constitutes of semantics and the syntax. However, as I said, it is not expected that your proficiency that you have captured in the resume is something that, for example, you capture your language proficiency something about 7 to 8 on a 10 scale, right? So, but you should be able to reflect the same while you write the code, because see, understand that we will be given access to the code beta problem that you have solved. I mean, the complete code beta database will be given to us. So we will be able to access, in fact, all the evaluators will have the access. They will be able to see the way in which you have converted your problem statement to code. First of all, what problem statement is given? What was the test stimulus that you have applied to verify whether the correct functionality is captured from the problem statement or not? And what is the outcome? And what is the relevance to this particular code to the problem statement? all those things will be visible, will be accessible to the evaluator. Please keep that in mind. And in line with that, he or she might ask additional questions in continuation or associated to that. So that will be aligned to the language proficiency that is captured in your resume. And in case if that is going to be the same language that you're using to solve in Code Vita, the evaluator expects you to show the same level of proficiency which is aligned to what is captured. So please keep that in mind. All right. And next couple of things I believe I've pretty much explained in the earlier slides, but the alignment is what I'm talking about in the expectations part. So logic correctness is more important. Conceptual understanding, logic correctness is more important than the syntax and grammar. So maybe one question quickly comes in the mind is like, then what is it that you're actually looking at? Like then, so that is the reason why we ask you to write the pseudocode. For example, if we ask you to write a simple program for a simple array or probably a palindrome, don't write the complete code. Nobody expects, in fact, like you start writing from hash include preprocessor directives till the end of the code, which is not required. Maybe it is a pseudocode, or the code which actually captures the logic is something which the evaluator would expect. And so the expectations are the demonstration of your coding skills in terms of the algorithmic structures, the syntax, semantics, and also the problem statement, the derivation. And finally, how are you actually going to validate it? How are you going to verify it? What kind of a test stimulus? See, your design approach of the source code derivation approach is one aspect in programming. The thought process that is involved in identifying the test stimulus, the test cases for verifying or validating this particular design is another thought process. So it is required that a programmer should have these skills go hand in hand. Okay, so this is basically a trade-off that should happen in the thought process of any programmer, both going hand in hand. So we will be able to evaluate you in terms of your thought process for this verification and validation also. What kind of a test case identification you're doing, how are you applying it, what alignment is seen post simulation or the evaluation of the code in alignment to the requirements of the problem statement, right? So these are some technical aspects that we expect. Apart from that, we also would like to evaluate you on how are your interpersonal skills. How are you trying to demonstrate? How are you trying to present yourselves? How are you trying to communicate to the other person? In fact, in that occasion, it is going to be your interviewer, right? So understanding the mode of this discussion being online, still we expect these things to be intact, right? So coming to what is the preparation? What is the contribution one should be doing as part of this Code Vita interview? What preparatory steps, what self-research, what self-analysis is supposed to be done? These are a few very important things I notice in most of the aspirers to be missing actually. So it could be because of multiple reasons. Maybe they are quite tensed, petrified or all that, but stay calm and please understand that you need to recollect the problem statement, come up with some preparation well before the interview. So this being a Code Vita interview, so it is by default going to be a situation where you will be evaluated and asked questions on what you have solved, right? So please make sure that you recollect the problem statement which was given to you, right? And how did you solve it? And what was the stimulus that you applied? And what was the approach that you had? Maybe any other additional inputs that you wanted to share across. Keep all those things in mind and your approach. And what was the language used? It should not be a situation where you have written the code actually in C++, applied some test cases in C, but you come to the interview process and say that I think I have implemented in C++ or probably TCL or Perl or something else. Let's not get into such embarrassing situation. Please make sure that you avoid such chaos and panic situations at the last minute or the 11th hour. Please be prepared and have all that preparatory steps followed and have that information ready with you. Okay. And most importantly, see, the real-time application is something which will help the evaluator understand how is the applicant or the person who is aspiring for the opportunity trying to think in a real-time perspective? Okay, so for example, you take a simple example of a matrix multiplication. Assume that is the problem statement given to you. So matrix multiplication is applied across many applications in the real world. Okay, for example, you take an imaging application or a video analytics application. The inputs that you give, the image that you capture are transformed to pixels. You know what a pixel is, right? And they are again transformed to coordinates, vectors, and finally to a matrix. So if you wanted to do some compression, decompression, or processing of the image, so it is all the algorithmic structures or the algorithmic processing of the matrices that happens. So you need to explain, you need to understand what is the real-time scenario. There could be some questions on what is the real-time scenario. Can you give a thought on what is the real-time scenario of the problem statement given to you? So you need to really give a thought about it. It's not just limited to what the problem statement, your approach and all that. You need to think big, actually. You need to think out of the box and see what is the real-time application. And please expect such questions will definitely be posed by the interviewer. All right. The next thing is so more or less similar to this. I did give an example of the same use case scenario exploration. So the one that I just spoke about is one such exploration. There are many such domains in the automotive space. I spoke about the imaging. Today we are in the age of AI, ML, IoT, the multiple applications in which you can think about aligned to the problem statement which is given to you. All right. And conceptual understanding in relevance to the problem statement and code. What domain that this particular problem statement would be most applicable to is something which you can pretty much think about and give a thought before appearing for this interview. And please make sure that your CV is updated, up to date. Make sure that all the elements are properly captured in the CV. Just tick mark yourself before appearing for this interview. Make sure that all the elements are captured. Like I see basic things are missing. The complete resume looks so attractive, with all the other elements and the kind of fancy elements, in fact. But unfortunately, the students miss to capture what domain they hail from, what is the discipline that they come from. So do not commit such silly mistakes. Be cautious, be conscious. Make sure that you are ready with your CV when all the aspects are concerned before you appear for this interview. Okay. Coming to the practical application of the coursework. See, this is something which is common to all disciplines. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to emphasize more on what kind of curriculum that you've gone through and its alignment basically to this particular job. But please keep in mind that you are appearing for a software job. So the primary emphasis of this particular, and this being a code vita interview, your primary emphasis will be on evaluation of your programming skills and the IT skills, which is actually common to all disciplines. It can be circuit branches or the non-circuit branches. I hope you understand the difference between these two, right? So irrespective of that, please understand that your primary emphasis of the evaluation is going to be on the programming skills that you possess and the IT skills together. All right. And one more thing is, like, see, whenever you are trying to explain something there on regarding your coursework, do not, if it is required, get into elaborate explanation, but it is always important that you just explain things to the point, right? So for example, if somebody is asking you what is the conceptuality, if the aspirer hails from, if the interviewer hails from a mechanical engineering background, and if the interviewer asks him, can you please tell me quickly what is the background, what is the mechanical engineering aspect in a pen, in a ball ink pen or a ballpoint pen, you can quickly say Reynolds theorem. That is enough. But do not get into the explanation that there is some Bernoulli's law, all that, and just do not get into an associative explanation of the complete theory there. It is not required unless it is really making sense at that point of time. All right. So try to be brief, be crisp, but answer to the point. So that is one thing. And then be prepared about the elements which are involved in your coursework along with the projects that you've carried out. For example, if you have done some contribution on Git, or if you have done some contributions to the open source communities, apart from that, if there is any project work that you have taken up, please make sure that you are pretty much prepared, capturing things on the resume with respect to goals. And maybe if you have worked for some particular company as an intern, who is the customer? You don't have to name it, but make sure that you're at least capturing the domain. What are the accomplishments as part of that particular project? How complex is that? What is the approach that you had in solving it? And what kind of an appreciations you have got. So please make sure that you're capturing it on the resume, and also be prepared with some content where you will be able to present it to the interviewer in person verbally as well, right? So please be prepared about all those things, and make sure that they are giving the necessary inputs of the work that you have done, capturing your roles and responsibilities of these contributions, as well as the projects that you've taken up, or could be the mini projects as well. It also should capture the technical skills that are involved. For example, if you have done it in C, C++, or if it is implemented using some COBOL or probably VB, backend some SQL kind of a language are used. And electronic students, if it is some VHDL, MATLAB, or if some assembly coding is involved for a microprocessor, microcontroller, what hardware, make sure all these ingredients are properly captured and be prepared with the content analogously with whatever is required at that point of time to explain about the project or the work or the contribution you have done. All right. So please make sure that you're prepared as far as this practical application of the coursework content to be properly projected when it is questioned during the process of the interview, right? So coming to the most important, aspect, what happens is like the aspirers keep in mind about all the aspects. They are up to the mark technically, but multiple things. It is because of the first time that they are appearing for this discussion, or they are kind of petrified. Sometimes I notice a lot of students appearing for the discussion, not having breakfast, skipping the breakfast, they're petrified. So these are a few things you should not do, which are not captured in this slide. But please understand that even the interviewer understands that this is your first discussion. This is your first technical interview that you are probably giving or appearing for. He or she will ask you whether if it is a first interview that you are appearing for, and he will definitely make sure that you are in comfort and in solace taking up this interview. All right. Please understand that you are talking to a same human being, but not a devil. So you don't have to be petrified. Just stay calm, cool, and composed. And because if you don't do that, you generally fall a prey for the pitfalls. And if you see the image that I've captured in the slide, it is pretty much depicting the same thing that I spoke about. So please avoid such situations. And coming to the pitfalls, which generally occurs, where I would like to kind of quickly emphasize on, not taking time basically to think about the problem, because he is probably petrified or not knowing what the problem statement is. Patiently listen to what the interviewer is asking. Take some time in understanding what the problem statement is. What is it that he is asking about? And if you're not clear, it is always good to say, "Sir, I have not understood," or what is it all about? Can you please re-explain, reframe, or reiterate it once again? It is good to say. It is very good to say that I have not understood. All right. So not being specific in answering to the point. Actually, it is one more thing which really kills a lot of time, and at times it might even irritate the interviewer. So keep that in mind. In fact, there are multiple students who have to go through this process, and in the interest of time, it is required that you should be crisp and to the point. You will have to answer the questions. Not answering the questions, which is one more thing, and not keeping all the infrastructure ready. See, this is one important thing I would like to highlight here, guys. As I said, the mode of the interview is going to be online. All right, it could be any app, as I said, but make sure that you are checking the Wi-Fi connectivity. Please check whether your laptop has got any issues, whether it is a laptop or a desktop, because you will have to share your screen, right? And you will have to, that is the mode of the communication with the interviewer, right? So while sharing your screen, there could be some issues that you might be experiencing. So it is always good to do a dry run of all these things. Make sure that these things are checked well before this discussion, and try to do a dry run with your friends or with self, basically, to see all these things are intact well before the discussion. Right? This is one very important thing, because if you don't look at the connectivity or something else, yeah, the time gets lapsed, and unnecessarily it could be a situation where your evaluation might get missed, right? So this is one very important thing, along with all the other pitfalls that I'm explaining. Understanding the mode of this interview, please make sure that all the infra connectivity things are up to the mark well before you appearing for this online discussion, which is going to be for this code beta interview. All right, and other things are pretty much explained. Being stuck somewhere, not asking the questions, not describing what solution you are writing. See, don't take a lot of time. So if you're starting with some program for the problem statement given, it is always a good practice to come back to the interviewer and say, sir, this is the approach that I wanted to. For example, I wanted to go with an object-oriented approach. I wanted to use a structured approach with this pointer, with this array being declared in this way, the structure being declared in this way. Will that work? I mean, if he says, I am leaving it to you, it's okay. But then if it is quite complex and if it is consuming time, it is always good to come back to him or her and mention this is the approach that you have. Because please understand that you answering the question alone will not be the criteria for your selection. Keep that in mind. A person who has answered the question, there is no definite guarantee. It is not taken for granted that he will be selected, he or she will be selected. There are multiple parameters that will be considered for a person's consideration for an opportunity. Please keep that in mind. There are multiple things which you may not be aware of. So please talk to him. Most importantly, as I've explained, it is the approach, your understanding, and the pseudocode description of it will be more than sufficient to make him understand what is the proficiency you have got. Okay, so please talk to him in between, and don't be silent in between if you are stuck. And I get to meet students where they in spite of probing them in between, are you okay? Are you actually? Can you please talk to me? They don't even look at the interviewer. They just bend down their head and they start writing the code. So please avoid such situations. It will be much more complex because this mode of the interview being online. Please make sure that now and then you are giving some probes back to the interviewer that you're still there and comfortable. Okay. And so this is pretty much about the common pitfalls I wanted to kind of emphasize. Make sure that you are not falling a prey for this pitfalls to ensure a smooth evaluation process. I've actually spoken in length till now, guys. I would like to conclude by sharing a few tips, okay, to ace this interview. First, but not the last but not the least, make sure that you are dressed up appropriately. My HR teams would probably inform you about the dress codes and all that, which are applicable for this process, keeping in view that this is an online evaluation process. Complete all the required paperwork. If there are any documents that you had to signature, if you have to sign, if there is any attestation process where you have to get through, scan them and send it. Make sure that you are pretty well informed about all the paperwork that is supposed to be completed to avoid a last-minute chaos or panic. You make sure that all things are in place. And be courteous to the interviewer. It is not that you are intentionally not being courteous. At times you get petrified. You get into a situation where you are pretty much tensed, and you are probably running out of the energy because you haven't had your breakfast or something else too. It's not intentional though. But then the way the word comes out of the answers come out of your mouth might not sound courteous. So avoid such situations because that really disturbs the decorum and the environment of that evaluation process, and it really gives a different impression altogether to the evaluator. So please keep that in mind. And please make sure that you get some solace by self. Okay, it is always a good practice that if you find that you are actually getting petrified or tensed, take a couple of long breaths and understand the fact that I am actually going to crack this interview in a positive way. You are going to give your best shot. Nothing else is going to happen is what you have to think. Stay calm, stay cool, stay composed. As I said, as I quoted earlier, the interviewer will also understand that this will be your first interview, and he will understand all the hiccups that you will be experiencing internally. So his or her job will also be not just to evaluate you, but initially before the evaluation process starts, they will make sure that you are in comfort and solace. And once you pick up the pace and you maintain the momentum, once the momentum picks up, they start getting into the discussion. So don't worry, just stay calm, cool, composed, and avoid getting into tranquil kind of a thoughts. Be delinquent as much as possible. All right, that would actually, that kind of a thought process will help you to approach unique techniques to solve the problems, and that uniqueness is what helps you to be the standout, right? So think out loud, stay calm, stay cool, stay composed, and that's it. You don't have to think much about the paradigms or the parameters or the evaluation factors. You will be able to succeed very easily, ensuring a very smooth evaluation process. So thank you, everyone. I think I've pretty much covered whatever is required. I'll leave it to you all for any questions that you have. I'll be happy to address all that you have. That's about it.
Okay, thanks a lot, Arjun, for that session. I think if students have gone through all of those points and they have internalized all those inputs, it will be really helpful for them for facing not only CodeVita interviews but any other interview process. I think whatever you told applies to any other interview process which they might attend. So thank you for sharing all those insights. So we have opened the question answers now. So students can put up their questions. We will go through them and then we will answer. Okay, so we see there are quite a few questions on when will the results be announced. I cleared one solution, got errors. So for all of this, I can tell you that the evaluation, or rather the finalization of these results is currently in progress. It will take a few more days of time before these are announced. And whatever you have done in CodeVita, based on that, the evaluation will be done. And as we have already communicated in multiple forums, there is a check on plagiarism also, which will be done. So wherever our system sees that there has been some code that has been copied, or if there is any malpractice that has happened, those candidates will be disqualified. So so for all the people who have questions on the results, that is still in progress. It will be announced soon once the results are finalized. Hari, I'm looking at this. Arjun, you are also able to see the questions that are published, no?
Yes, I'm able to see that. I'm looking at a question posed by Hema Manikanta. Sir, I have completed 2 questions, but both the questions passed public test cases only. Got runtime error during private test cases. Is there any change of getting qualified for next round? Karthik, this is for you.
To all of these questions, that's what I answered. So this results evaluation is still in progress. So that's how I would answer it. So see, it will be very difficult to tell. From our side, we will not know what is the question, what is the code that you submitted, what was how that code was working. So just take it that for all the students, based on whatever your submissions are, those will be evaluated and then the results will be finalized.
Okay. Okay.
I think we can. Okay, there's one person who has said, firstly, thank you so much, sir. It was very informative. And is a project necessary in our resume to attend the interview? If not, does it make a negative impact?
Yeah, let me answer this question. See, definitely not a negative impact. See, it is going to help us understand how will you, this is a couple of things, right? One, how are your programming skills? How good are you in converting a problem statement to code is one aspect. Second thing is, see, project works are the ones which can help you to bridge the gap between your theory and application. And at the same time, it will also help us understand what kind of a teamwork that you have done, how good a team player are you, and apart from being an individual contributor as well. So these are the things which can help us to evaluate, but that doesn't necessarily have to come from your presence in a project work. Please understand that. It does not create any negative impact. It is good to have, but not a must necessarily. Maybe Karthik, you can add to this, because these interviews are happening well before the final year second semester, right? So they generally take up the project dissertation at the second year. If there are any mini projects or if there are any contributions that you have done to the open source, please make sure that you are mentioning them. But I would definitely like to answer at the outset saying it is not going to create a negative impact though, but it is going to help us in understanding these aspects that I spoke about.
Yes, I also agree, Arjun. That's what it is. It's not mandatory. Obviously, if you have not had the opportunity to do a project, not everyone might have had that. And if you have, like Arjun said, any mini projects, anything which you have done, that can be put. Otherwise, it's not going to make a negative impact. Just because there is no project mentioned on the resume, it's not like a mandatory thing.
Correct.
So there's also a question about interviews. So again, once the results are announced, so there will also be it will also be finalized as to which are the students that are going to get a direct interview opportunity with TCS. So all of this is going to happen soon. So you can expect interviews to happen in the month of September. So the exact dates and the time frame that will be communicated to the respective students, because again, as Arjun was also mentioning, these interviews are going to be conducted on video mode. So that will have to be planned, and then the appropriate communication will go to the students.
I think I have a question for me. If we don't know about the question, the interviewer asked, like, I know Python and DBMS, but don't know how to connect both, then how should I answer? Okay, this is quite an interesting question. Okay, don't know about the question on the interview asked, like, I know Python and DBMS, but see, I believe that situation wouldn't arise actually. Someone who anonymously posed this question, see, it is made sure that the interviewer will not ask you something which is not captured in your resume, where you are not comfortable with. We will firstly ask you what is it that you are comfortable with and where do you rate yourself. If you say yes, looking at those things, he will be coming back with some questions based on the proficiency level you hold and whether you are comfortable or not. So such a situation will not arise, you know. But if you are experiencing a situation where see, interviewer may not be right all the time. Sometimes he wanted to understand what is at least your approach. You know, I'm talking about the other side of it. So you can probably tell him that, sir, I am not sure about the syntax and semantics of these Python and DBMS. However, I can give you this is what I was mentioning about. It is more important that you focus more on the approach with some pictorial representations on algorithms or some UML diagrams. So you can tell him that I am not sure about the language because I have never used it. I don't have any hands-on, but you can tell him the approach. So this is how this is the algorithmic structure of converting this problem statement to this particular code, or connecting the front-end application to the back-end database, right? You can probably explain it pictorially to him. He would be okay, he would be fine with that. I hope I've answered this question.
Arjun, I'm seeing this one interesting question here. Sir, I hope you are aware about Telegram groups. Many students join those groups and the answers are sold for money. Does CodeVita team consider this while evaluating questions? It's a good point. Yes, so we have been so on the ground while the contest was going on, we have been closely monitoring Twitter, social media channels, blog posts, and also, yes, we are aware that there are groups that are there where they are, posting the answers. So, see, CodeVita being an open book kind of a format contest, there's only so much we can do. So wherever possible, we have actually reached out to those people and tried to control that. But then beyond a point, that is not possible. But if somebody has taken these solutions, that would most likely be caught during the plagiarism check, because I think you will agree with me, Arjun, since you have a close kind of understanding of how the questions are formulated also.
Correct.
It is very difficult to have a one-shot solution to a CodeVita problem.
Correct.
Am I right, Arjun? So it is not like a simple program where you can just get a ready-made answer to it. There will be multiple stages, multiple things that one has to go through, and then apply some logic to solve the problem. So the system is tuned in such a way that it can detect these things. So if everything is the same, so if Arjun has participated and Karthik has participated, and both of our code is just the same, then both of us will get disqualified. And it is people who are just simply changing the variable names. The system is tuned enough to catch these things. So I wouldn't worry too much about these groups. So people who have indulged in malpractice, they will anyway be caught and disqualified by the system itself. And then where the students who we are inviting for an interview process, anyway, as Arjun said, there will be a thorough evaluation done on their coding skill. So that should be good enough to ensure that it is only the genuine, people who are good in coding skills make it through.
True. See, there are multiple ways to solve a problem, and the choice is given to the students to use any of the languages, right? So, as rightly mentioned by Karthik, there is a plagiarism tool which catches hold of the copy paste kind of a things which you do for the same language and all that, right? So having said all these things, there are possibilities for such malpractices to happen. So that is where those are the things which will be caught during this evaluation process.
Yeah. So Arjun, so there are some questions on students who have completed fully passed test case, private test case. So I'm just saying for all of these, I'm just giving the common answer, saying that again, based on the evaluation, because it is not possible for Arjun or Karthik to tell whether based on what you did in CodeVita, whether you will make it to round 2 or not. But that's what, based on the submissions, those submissions will be evaluated, and based on that, the results will be finalized.
Makes sense, Karthik. Yeah.
One question is there, maybe you can give your insight on that, Arjun. What are the basic criteria required to be filled in the resume?
What are the basic criteria required to be filled in the resume? Okay, basic criteria required. All right, so
I think that whoever has asked that question, he or she means because you were mentioning, right, like sometimes students don't mention important things in the resume. So maybe you can just highlight 2 or 3 of the most important things that definitely should be there in a student's resume.
Sure. See, answer to the point, actually answering to the point. So most important things which are like kind of mandates to be captured in the resume are: what is the discipline that you hail from? What are the major and minor subjects in case if there is an option from some universities, may not be with all. And at the same time, what are the electives that you have taken during your 3-2-4-1-4-2? Apart from this minor, major, some universities have major, minor subjects, and some universities have electives like JNTU and all that, right? Please make sure that you are capturing it somewhere. It is also a good practice to mention what is the CGPA, and see, this is one thing I would like to mention here since this discussion has come out. Some universities have the practice, roll out the results in CGPA. Some universities GPA. Some universities percentage. Karthik, we consider it. We are actually mentioning the criteria in percentage and CGPA. Am I right? As per TCS.
Yes. So I think Arjun, now as per the criteria, the student doesn't really need to be worried about that because we are looking at either. So if the university is specifying it in CGPA, they can do that. If it is percentage, they can do that as well.
Correct. At this point of time, it may not be required, but it is always a good practice to capture what is the CGPA that you have acquired, what is the percentage you acquired, but make sure that you are, for example, if it is CGPA or GPA, please don't use the generic formula for CGPA, GPA, because there are university defined formulas for GPA, CGPA, for percentile and percentage. I have come across such profiles on multiple occasions, and this is the reason why I'm specifically pointing out to that aspect here. Please make sure that you are using the same formula which is defined by your university, but don't generalize it to the percentage or the general formula in mathematics for CGPA, GPA. Please don't do that. So this is one point I would like to mention. And like I said, the discipline, the major, minor subjects, the CGPA, GPA, and what is when you capture the project. In case if you have to mention what is the coursework you have done, or for example, if it is an open source contribution you have done, just don't mention the URL. Make sure that you are capturing that hash code or your specific credential specific URL complete with the domain as well as the final end domain code there. It could be a situation where the evaluator wanted to quickly cross-check, because see, now it is an online mode of evaluation, right? He can just copy the link there, and he may quickly wanted to check if you have really contributed to the open source community or not. So don't mention github.com. I've seen such kind of things mentioned in the CVs. Make sure that you are capturing the complete URL along with the hash code mapped to your credentials, along with the domain. Okay. And if it is a project work, make sure that you are mentioning your role, your responsibility, the tools used. What is you don't have to elaborately explain the complexity, all that, but just mention what is the objective in a couple of sentences. What tools used, languages which are actually used to implement it, what are the highlights, what is the objective. So I think these are the ones you definitely have to mention, at least to make sure that it is full in all the aspects for a resume or a CV.
Okay. Arjun, I think we will just be able to spend another 5 minutes. So we'll just take 2 or 3 other questions and then we can conclude the session.
Sure.
So there are a few questions again, like if the logic is correct and if it is compiled, is there a chance to be selected for interview? I have done one question completely accepted, one with public cases accepted. After my code is accepted in Code Vita, I make up my code with some fake unnecessary variables. Will it be a negative point for me? So these things, all of it, again, I will repeat. It is a system that is evaluating your code. Okay, so it is like, in a way, you can say that when you write a program and you compile it, just the way that a compiler is actually converting that program into this an object file and then executing it, same process happens, and there are metrics which the Code Vita system detects, and based on that it evaluates. So whether the solution is correct, whether the test cases are passed. So there is a so based on how students have performed, the results will be finalized. So more than this, we will not be able to share with you. The next thing is, okay, thank you for this session, sir. Can you please explain about plagiarism and how the systems will detect? So again, as I mentioned, the CodeVita problems are complicated enough that it will not be a one-shot solution. So there will be multiple stages that a student has to think through. So there are multiple ways the system is tuned to detect plagiarism. So it could be, one is at just the text level, and there are some more advanced ways in which the system will detect whether the code is plagiarized. Again, more details than this we will not be able to share, but just take it that the system cannot be fooled by simply just changing the variable names. I mean, it will detect that the code is copied even beyond that. What is the CTC we can expect once we get selected in the interview? So the CTC for a regular offer for TCS is 3.36 lakhs per annum for BTech plus up to 60,000 rupees incentive. And for postgraduates, it will be 3.5 lakhs per annum and up to 60,000 rupees incentive. So this will be applicable if the students who are getting a regular offer from CodeVita. We might identify few students for what is called a digital offer, where the pay package will be higher. There it will be, instead of 3.3 and 3.5, it will be 7 and 7.3 lakhs. This is one more question I think you can answer, Arjun, and then after that I think we are more or less done. We can take this as the last question and then conclude. What can be the technical questions that can be asked during the interview? I think mostly your entire session is focused on that, but I think he or she was wanting to know a little more details on the questions that will be asked, specific types of questions.
Yeah. See, the questions can be more on the practical approach the aspirer had in mind to convert the problem statement to code. What is the use case scenario as far as the programming languages are concerned and its usage? And when it comes to the coursework or your project, what was your contribution specifically, the technical contribution, like the languages? What kind of scripting you have done? How did you apply the script? What was the connectivity? How was the connectivity established between the backend database and the front end, or any other automation that you have done? And on top of all these things, as I've mentioned on multiple occasions during the discussion, it is not the syntax, but the semantics and approach would be of utmost importance as part of the evaluation.
Yes, I think with that it is 3 o'clock, and I think we can conclude the session. So thanks a lot, Arjun, for sharing so many insights. I think it was really very detailed, and you have shared a lot of very useful inputs to the students. So we would like, entire TCS team would like to wish all the students who are on this session all the very best. We could see, I think there are around 2,000 people who have participated in this session. So thanks everybody. Wishing you all the very best, and we will conclude.
Thank you.